teachers of Reddit, what's the worst fight you had to break up? Actual teacher here. It was after school and I was headed to the copy room. On the way is the cafeteria, which had been cleared of all the tables and was basically just one big empty area except for the huge mass of students that had developed. I rushed into the massive crowd where two different circles had formed. It was literally like being at a metal concert with two mosh pits. At least 16 kids were fighting. When I broke through, one kid fell in front of me and the guy who pushed him ran up and did a Yannikovsky kick to his head. All metal moshing instincts kicked in where my main goal was to basically push away as many people as possible and keep them away from each other until more AP's officers could arrive to help. It was chaos. So I don't remember much after that. To this day I don't even know why they were fighting. Once everything was settled, I picked my paper back up and went back to making copies. The worst fight I broke up wasn't because of students getting hurt, but because of how lame it was. First off, I teach middle school, which is just one awkward moment after another. These two kids were arguing over a pencil because one kid supposedly broke the other kid's pencil. They were bickering back and forth like two old men and then they just broke out in really mediocre wrestling. It was embarrassing to watch because neither boy could even wrestle and I was able to just tell them to stop and send them to the office with no other issues. Another reason it was the lamest fight ever was because all the other students who were working at other tables went about their work and talking to each other and didn't even notice. Usually they would be chanting fight over and over and crowding around trying to film for World Star. I've only broken up a few fights, and they were pretty mundane, but if there is one thing I know is that girls' fights are worse than boys. Girls will go for your eyes, but boys typically stick to an honor code. No hits below the belt and all that. I am an English teacher in France. This happened in the classroom next door to mine and I just witnessed the aftermath and heard the gossip from my friend who did break it up and was there to hear the story when they got hauled into the admin's office. One of my male students was named Timothy, who was dating a girl named Anna a year under him. One day last year he apparently left his phone unattended and unlocked and she picked it up and started searching through it. What Anna found was his very male best friend Louis sexting and sending him nudes and talking about how much he loved him, and Tim was texting back and being equally enthusiastic about the two of them being together out in the open once they finished school and were in university. She proceeded to screenshot and send all those texts, sexts and nudes to her boyfriend's parents before replacing his phone so he wouldn't know. Tim's parents are very conservative, and when I say very, I mean very. His mother once called me to complain about his grade in English and it evolved into a rant about foreign students that would make Marine Le Pen proud, and Anna knew, so that's why she went this revenge route. This kid went home to be blindsided thanks to her. And apparently he had to basically flee the house because he was afraid of his father literally killing him. Louis turned up to school the next day, calmly entered Anna's first period class and beat the ever-loving it out of her. Just wailed on her. He was skinny thin but knew what he was doing and she was super tiny and it was not a fair fight at all and he just obliterated her. I just heard him screaming after he had been restrained, which is when I went to go check. She had a black eye and a broken eye socket and there was blood everywhere from her mouth and nose. Louis was borderline hysterical and screaming about her being a witch who ruined Tim's life. It was bad. Not a teacher, but in my low-income urban public school we had an actual riot, with students punching police officers, tripping the fire alarm, damaging property, and screaming obscenities. School was cancelled for 2 days as teachers reviewed security footage and suspended kids. Of course, it was a doozy to break up. A lot of dissatisfied kids in the cities. I am not a teacher, but I have worked in K-12 ed for 10 years. So I have been in a lot of classrooms. Teachers aren't supposed to break up fights and usually get hurt trying to do so. That being said, the worst fight I saw was in a science lab. I was in the back of the lab installing some software to go with a digital microscope and a large 8th grade girl was singing disrespectfully while the teacher was talking. Tiny 8th grade girl behind her was getting pissed and telling her to shut up because she couldn't hear what the teacher was saying. Big girl continued to sing. Tiny girl says for the last time, "Shut the duck up, I'm trying to learn," then proceeds to leap over the lab table between them. grabs the big girl's hair and proceeds to bash her face into the table over and over again, screaming at her to shut the duck up. They had to get a very large male administrator in there to pull her off. The teacher got elbowed in the face when she tried to step in. Said screw it and ran out into the hall to get an admin. Fun times. Not a teacher, but saw the craziest fight when I was in high school. There was girl, I'll call her Girl A, who was mentally challenged. Rumors were she was a preemie born addicted to drugs. Itty home life. In foster care. Just all around crappy situation for her. She was about 4 minutes and 10 seconds in high school. Just a really little person. Well, this one girl, Girl B, thought she was the prime target to bully. And, well, she picked the ducking wrong person to bully. B messes with A for a few weeks until the day A snaps. Here's the thing, in our high school we had the gates that drop down to close off corridors. You just hit the emergency release and the gates slam down and there's no leaving that corridor until the on-campus police officer comes to unlock it with a key. Never had these gates been used. Until B messed with A for the last time. Remember, A is mentally challenged and special needs. B is messing with A and all of a sudden A runs for the emergency release button for these gates to drop. Gates drop, it's A and B and a few bystanders stuck in the corridor. A beats the ever-loving it out of B. Remember how the on-campus police officer has to unlock the gate with a key? Yeah? Well, that took a solid 5-6 minutes to go get the key and get back to the corridor. And by this time there's students on each end of the corridor pressed against the gates to watch the ass kicking that's happening. B ended up going to the hospital and never came back to school. Rumor was she was in alternative school for all the bullying and A ended up in a state psych ward. I used to teach high school in rural Georgia. I had to break up a fight between 2 girls and a heavily pregnant girl. I never taught these girls and it happened between classes in the hallway in front of my room. The pregnant girl was on the floor screaming and crying while one girl was kicking her in the head and one kicking her in the stomach. I grabbed each of them by their upper arms and hauled them away very hard. One fell back on her ass and the other nearly fell. The one on her ass started crying about how I'd hurt her. The other girl acted like she was going to rush me or the pregnant girl. I grabbed her, held her back, and told her that if she tried it again I'd make her wish she hadn't. She tried to hit me, and I twisted her arm until she was on the floor kneeling and screaming. Meanwhile, one of the other teachers helped the pregnant girl and another called the nurse principal. I was the only one to act for a good 30-40 seconds. My boyfriend is a security guard person at a high school in a pretty harsh area of LA and had to break up a fight between 2 girls who had found out their boyfriend was cheating on both of them. Weaves were pulled off. One bit the other's arm till she started to bleed. 2 black eyes. Bloody noses. It was intense and the girls got suspended. That boyfriend just sat and watched with his friends, thinking he was the it. Also, one time, 2 guys got in a fight over who got the last piece of pizza during lunch. They broke each other's nose. Not a teacher. At my old high school I watched a guy with a skateboard chase after another guy, who I knew pretty well, accusing him of stealing weed money from his house. He caught up to the second guy, who was denying everything, and started bashing his face with the skateboard. My and about 50 other high schoolers watched through the plate glass windows of the cafeteria as the guy was repeatedly thrown against that same glass. We all just stood there yelling and being generally stupid. Then a girl who I was pretty good friends with and who had no connection to either of the guys marched up yelling at the first guy to stop. She's a wrestler and football player and well known for being kind but very buff and strong. She somehow sent the first guy on his way and helped up the bleeding kid. Definitely the best fight I've seen on campus for the amount of blood and the awesome girl. Side note, don't feel bad for the bleeding boy. He's an asshole and probably did steal the weed lol. I'm not a teacher, but my high school put a jukebox in our cafeteria one year and for $1 you could play 3 songs. So these 3 girls put in like $5 and played 50 Cent's in Dark Club on repeat. After the 4th or so repeat of the same song, some girl had had enough and went to unplug the jukebox. The 3 girls literally jumped her right there. Punches and hair flying everywhere. I'll give the one girl credit. She was holding her own against the 3 of them. This is all going on and that ducking song was still playing. Everybody's watching them kick the it out of each other. After about a minute in, some guy strolls over all casual like and unplugs the jukebox. They stopped fighting after that and that song was never played again. The end.